You discussed, their technology and the U.S. role in building the Chinese system, and I think that segues pretty well to the complicity, as you frame it, self-interested, of U.S. technology in building this surveillance state. And what do you think can and should be done from a matter of industrial policy to try to counteract it?
Wow, you just asked the $64 million or $64 billion question. Yes, see, there was a period where we believed the Chinese were moving in broad directions that were in conformity with international ideals. And so it was okay for American companies to go in and sell technology. We thought it was a positive. We thought it was a win. So Microsoft helped China develop their whole artificial intelligence industry. Cisco, as I mentioned, helped build the Great Wall. Intel sells more semiconductors in China than it sells in the United States. Qualcomm's semiconductors, they design semiconductors made by Taiwan Semiconductor in Taiwan. They're showing up in the hands of the Chinese military. NVIDIA in California sells graphics chips that end up in the hands of the companies doing the surveillance of the Uyghurs in Xinjiang. On and on it goes. Thermo Fisher sells DNA testing equipment that the authorities use to build up DNA databases of suspected miscreants, including people of ethnicity that they don't trust. So suddenly we realize that the Chinese are not moving in anything resembling conformity with American interest or American values. So American companies, American CEOs, and I've interviewed thousands or hundreds, certainly hundreds of American CEOs over the years, who believe that they have the right, in fact, that it's their mission to sell technology anywhere in the world that they can make money.
Yeah.
And that their mission is to enhance shareholder earnings every quarter, that they are no responsibility for national security. That's the government's problem. So there's a moment of great reckoning coming in. We see it in China right now. Xi Jinping is cracking down on their technology companies, demanding that their data become pure, that they don't have any foreign entanglements, that software become indigenized, that it's no longer foreign technology. We face one of the most sensitive and difficult debates that we face is, can the American government work with American business in mitigating the rise of a technological powerhouse that represents a clear challenge to our interests? This is hot. This is really a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, it's as big as it gets, and it does segue to one of the other themes of your book, which is that a lot of the short-term or quarterly earnings thinking of American businesses has been insufficient to the grand strategy needs of our time. I want to narrow it a little bit to the, because this is the OPC, to that kind of zero-sum thinking as it applies to the media industry. And you tee off appropriately on Alden Capital and some of the others, but really because your career has witnessed the winnowing of journalism. Folks who haven't had the privilege of reading your book yet, I wonder if you would just summarize your sense of how the journalistic establishment got hollowed out, and then we can discuss some of the ways you think it can be rebuilt.
Wow, another billion-dollar question. Well, so every organization I worked for in my career either went bankrupt or was sold for pennies on the dollar. UPI was sold out. Then I went to Business Week for 11 years, and that was sold to Bloomberg for pennies on the dollar. I went to U.S. News and World Report. It went dark. I went to Business 2.0. It sold to Time Inc. and went dark.
It's an amazing story, by the way, about the sale.
Yeah.
I want to tell people because it's actually a real testament to the idiocy of some of these.
Well, we were at Business 2.0. This is during the time of the first internet bubble, and so we had a mission to go up against the Forbes, Fortune, and Business Week, and we had really a very dynamic mix of very talented people. And so Time Inc. bought us for $100 million and fired everybody. and merged the magazine with something called E-Company Now. And then they had to invest another $100 million in trying to rescue their sorry asses. And so it didn't work. They ended up closing the whole thing. So they lost $200 million on what a stupid decision. So yeah, I mean, my whole career was characterized by this. And every time I mention these things, people say to me, Bill, please don't come to work here. Please, whatever you do, don't come to work here. So over the years, you see how the ownership structure was hollowed out. The Gannett's and the Chicago Tribunes and those guys were able to take over so many of the newspapers, so many media outlets, and start squeezing them. At the same time, we have the vulture capitalists sweep in and start snapping up media assets. And so there was nobody to stop it, nobody to resist it. And so I argue in the book that journalists, we need to step outside the newsroom, and rather than going home at the end of the day, or in the old days, going to the bar, that we need to be engaged in conversations about who owns our media, who owns us, and are we stable or not enough to do our job, which is the job of being the voice, the conscience of America? Can we do that job, or do we get sidelined into sowing hate and division? And of course, the rise of the social media giants is another major piece of this, that they absorb so much content from us, and yet, there would be an antitrust violation for the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, ABC, CNN, et cetera, to say, we're going to sit down and create a council to negotiate with Google over what they pay us for our content. That's the antitrust. Can you believe that? I mean,
Yeah.
Google and Facebook, Amazon, Microsoft, all of them have created these incredible platforms that have the power to dictate what we believe. They're shaping what Americans believe, and they are cannibalizing the advertising base that once sustained the American media. So we have an urgent mission to think outside of just getting the story and just doing our jobs, just beating the opposition, to think about how can we create conversations in which we can say, how do we recreate an American media that is not dominated by the social algorithms that create division, that intentionally and consciously create division? How can we rescue ourselves from the clutches of the vulture capitalists? How can we rebuild any measure of a media that does what I was trained, believe you were trained to do, which was try to be at the center of the national debate and try to be arbiters, gatekeepers, try to do the right thing for the democracy. Well, I know that sounds like incredibly naive, incredibly simple, but that's what we're supposed to do. And so if we cannot figure out a way to create an environment of opinion, that then nobody else can.